So, how can you protect yourself when you're in an altercation? Like, what are the best ways to, when you're in a situation where you have to use self defense, like Zimmerman or any of these, the guy on the subway,
Daniel Penny.
Penny, Penny. Yeah. When they're in those situations, what is the best way to protect themselves?
Well, of course, there's two fights we're talking about, right? There's
Mhm.
the physical fight. You have to win the physical fight or nothing else really matters, right?
Mhm.
You lose the physical fight, who cares about the legal stuff?
Right.
And that really involves what I would call tactical decisions. Like, do you have a gun? Do you have a knife? Do you know how to use them? Do you do some martial art like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? If you don't train for the physical fight, you're going to lose the physical fight. If people don't win because they're going to go, I don't know, crazy mode or something. That's not reality. You don't rise to your aspirations or your imaginary capabilities. Your performance is going to be what you can demonstrate cold on any given day at a range or in a dojo or wherever you prepare for the physical fight. So I would encourage people to do that, prepare for the physical fight. I know personally, I carry a gun every day of my adult life for personal protection. I do BJJ several times a week so I can have a non gun answer to problems, a barehanded answer, to maintain that proficiency myself. So, first, you got to do what needs to be done to win the physical fight. The next question is, what can you do to win the legal fight? You want great legal counsel, for sure. And most lawyers are not particularly good. Like any profession, lawyers aren't a bell curve. 80% of them are in the middle. They're okay.
Mhm.
10% of them suck. 10% of them are really good. You want one of the 10% that's really good. But even having done that, it's important to keep in mind that your lawyer is not a magician. He can't turn a bad shoot into a good shoot. Your
Mhm.
lawyer is stuck with the facts you give him. If you give him good facts, you'll have a great defense. In fact, you can make yourself super hard to convict. That's what we teach at Law of Self-Defense, is how to be hard to convict. But if you give your lawyer bad facts, that's going to be a really, really difficult case to have a good outcome in.
Bad facts.
Bad facts. So
Mhm.
what did you do? Was your conduct actually within the legal boundaries of self-defense? If
Mhm.
it was, you're hard to convict. But your lawyer can't change that retroactively. You have to have made the right decisions in the moment when you were defending yourself. How do you know what those right decisions are? Well, with stuff like this, learn the actual law of self defense. If you do that and you stay well within the legal boundaries, you're really difficult to convict and you're unlikely, because you're hard to convict, to be charged in the first place.
If it's a political ploy, does it matter?
Yes and no. So, having made the right decisions will not keep you from going to trial if it's a politically energized case. You're going to
Mhm.
go. But George Zimmerman went to trial and Kyle Rittenhouse went to trial and they got acquitted. They got
Mhm.
acquitted because their use of force was inside the legal boundaries.
Mhm.
So is it still important to know the legal boundaries and stay within them in a politically charged case? Yeah. Because if you don't do that, your conviction's easy. You're done.
Well, what was the difference between them and like Derek Chauvin? Like, why did Derek go to prison and they didn't?
One of the reasons was the case just came later. Every time these politically energized cases come up, the people who want to drive, say, the racism angle in the case, they get more sophisticated. They get better at what they're doing. There were some of the facts in the Chauvin case were particularly subject to manipulation. So, for example, while Chauvin is kneeling on George Floyd,
Mhm.
a technique that was trained in the police academy for him
Mhm.
to use just didn't come out of the blue. He was a 20-year officer. I bet he'd done that 10,000 times before. No suspect had ever died. But while he's kneeling on George Floyd and George Floyd is saying, I can't breathe, because he just took a mouthful of drugs and had coronary artery disease and had fought 4 police officers for 10 minutes. But he's saying, I can't breathe. There's 15, 20 people standing on the curb watching this.
Mhm.
They're all outraged.
Mhm.
They believe they see a man being murdered. Every single one of those persons testified in court, one after another, after another, after another.
Oh.
In a proper criminal prosecution, that would never have been allowed to happen because they all basically saw the same thing. It would have been called
Oh.
cumulative evidence, which normally is not allowed. One or two of them could have said, I saw this. We know the other people all saw the same thing. But when you allow 20 people to tell the same story, it makes it sound as if their evidence is 20 times as strong as it actually is. Another factor was Derek Chauvin had one defense lawyer. The prosecution team had 10 or 15 lawyers working for it. So they would argue all day in court, and then the prosecution team would file a whole bunch of motions that had to be reviewed overnight by the defense team, the one lawyer, defense lawyer. So not only was that guy working all day, he was basically working all night handling these motions. He could not sleep for the several weeks of the trial.
So why did why was it so one-sided? Is it because he couldn't afford more lawyers, I'm guessing?
Well, however much you can afford, the state can always afford more. So the
Mhm.
state's resources are effectively infinite, and nobody can match infinite
Oh.
resources.
But why didn't that happen with the Zimmerman case?
So in Zimmerman, it was one of the first of these politically energized cases, and
Mhm.
George Zimmerman set up a GoFundMe type of platform,
Oh.
and he was allowed to collect a lot of money. He collected $1.5 million. Now his legal defense ended up costing closer to two
Mhm.
million, but nevertheless, with the 1.6 million he raised, that's a lot of resources for a criminal trial. So
Mhm.
they were more in parity with what the prosecution could bring to the table. After that, these GoSemi type organizations, and I don't want to pick them out, it's just the only one whose name I can remember. But many of them now, if you try to raise money for a legal defense, they'll shut you down. They won't let
No
you raise money.
way.
Yep, because they said, well, you've been credibly accused of criminal activity. We're not going to let you use our platform to raise legal defense funds. So a lot of that's off the table now.
Right. So Chauvin couldn't even raise the money for his case because none of the platforms would let him.
I expect none of them would.
Right. That case, I just can't believe the police chief turned on him. That was amazing. Like I couldn't I mean, I guess I would expect it maybe from like the witnesses and stuff, but you would think there'd be some honor, I guess, with the police chief.
Yeah, you have to keep in mind when someone becomes a police chief, when they've hit that top level within the department,
Mhm.
they're not a cop anymore. They're a politician now.
Mhm.
They get that job because the city council or whoever the governing body is chose them for that position. Those people are elected. Effectively, the police chief is elected by them. And so when he's faced with a Derek Chauvin type of position, he can say, well, this guy is just going to be sacrificed. It's
Mhm.
obvious they're going to do everything in their power to sacrifice this guy, regardless of the law or the evidence. I can either join him in going to the guillotine, or I can join the team sacrificing him and keep my career. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's not hard to understand why people would make that decision.
So, in your career as a lawyer, what are some of the most interesting cases you've had?
Well, they're all interesting in their own ways. So there's you think about the ways that people can screw up a claim of self-defense. People find every way
Mhm.
to screw it up. There's basically five things you need for a valid claim of self-defense. So it's not
Okay.
rocket science. It's not 500 things. It's not 50 things. It's
Mhm.
only five.
Mhm.
And I call these the five elements of self-defense:
Mhm.
innocence, imminence, proportionality, avoidance, and reasonableness.
Mhm.
Innocence meaning you didn't start the fight, which should be obvious, right?
Mhm.
If you start the fight, you can't claim self-defense. Imminence meaning what you're defending yourself against is happening right now. It's not someone who punched you yesterday and now you're getting him back. It's
Mhm.
not somebody who's threatening to harm you in the future, but isn't a threat right now. It has to be a threat that's occurring right now. Proportionality basically means you're not using deadly force to defend yourself unless you're facing a deadly force threat. So if someone shoves you, you can't go
Mhm.
to the gun. That would be a disproportional response. Avoidance has to do with whether or not you have a legal duty to retreat
Mhm.
before you can defend yourself. There's only 11 states that require that, so most states don't. And then reasonableness. Everything you perceive, you decide, you do in self defense has to be that of a reasonable person. So it's not imaginary,
Mhm.
it's not speculative. It's something that another reasonable person in your circumstance would share the same belief that you
Could
have.
I get an example of reasonable versus unreasonable?
Yeah. So I had a case where a woman was in the parking lot of a Walmart and she was putting her stuff in the trunk of her car. And a guy walks up and says, "Hey, do you have a light for a cigarette?" And she pulled out a gun and pointed it at him. Now, she was probably afraid this guy was going to mug her. Muggers, in fact, use this kind of approach language all the time.
Mhm.
Do you have some change? Do you have the time? Do you have a light?
Mhm.
Because they're trying to keep your brain occupied while they close proximity
Mhm.
to get close enough to hurt you or grab your purse or whatever. That's probably what she perceived was going on.
Did she
So,
shoot him?
no, she just
Okay.
pointed the gun.
Okay.
But that guy ran back into the Walmart and he called the police. Said, "There's a crazy woman in the parking lot just pointed a gun at me." The police showed up and now they have to ask the woman, "Why did you point a gun at that guy?" For her to have a reasoned response,
Mhm.
she would have had to say, "Well, I saw these things that made me think he was a deadly force threat."
Mhm.
He verbally said something, he showed a weapon, some evidence to which she applied her powers of reason
Mhm.
That would be a reasonable belief. She wasn't able to say anything like that. So she got charged with a felony.
Oh, wow. I guess that would be an overreaction, but I could see why she would do it. But that would still be in the eyes of the law unreasonable.
Well, the prosecutor has to believe he can argue it was unreasonable to a
Mhm.
jury,
Mhm.
and then a jury would make a call. Now, this one ended up not going before a jury. But the argument the prosecutor was going to be able to make was sufficiently compelling that we didn't want to risk a jury, which is why she took the plea agreement.
Right. And so what would be like an example of a reasonable one?
Say, for example, she had told the police, listen, this guy asked me for a light behind me. And when I turned around, he was holding something shiny up at my face.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Now, maybe that would have been a pack of cigarettes,
Mhm.
not a weapon at all. So
Oh.
maybe technically she made a mistake about it being a weapon. But a reasonable person might have seen that flash of shiny light and thought it was a weapon
Mhm.
reasonably, right?
Mhm.
Under the circumstances. That might have been enough to get her out of the conviction.
Mhm.
But we do get interesting cases. We had one out of California a couple years ago. It was a murder case. It was a young woman. I'm not sure she was 21, and she had a one night stand with a guy,
Mhm.
and they got into some kind of argument. She says he attacked me. She was quite petite, and he was much larger than her. She had a little tiny folding knife that her dad had given her for self defense, and she takes out this folding knife, and this guy rushes at her, and she stabs him once in the chest with this little tiny knife. Well, that little knife cut his aorta
Oh.
in his chest, which is the highest pressure blood vessel there is in the body. The entire apartment in the forensics photos, it looked like someone had taken a hose of blood and sprayed
Mhm.
everything. And the guy falls down a flight of stairs. That gets all covered in blood, and he dies at the base of the stairs. And the police show up. She
Mhm.
calls them,
Mhm.
and they question her. And every officer who spoke with her wrote in his report she had a very cold demeanor.
Mhm.
She did not appear to be emotionally upset. That's what led to them charging her. If she had been crying and weeping, she might not have been charged with murder.
Mm.
But because, who knows, maybe she was in shock. Maybe she just has good emotional self control. Because of her calm demeanor, that's what ended up with her being charged with murder.
Mhm.
We got her acquitted, by the way.
Do you think their reactions mean anything? Like in your experience, does that stuff matter?
No, not necessarily. But the
Mhm.
lesson here is that the people who are evaluating our use of force after the fact
Yeah.
or making decisions about whether we're going to go to trial, run that risk of getting convicted, spend the rest of our life in a cage. It's not a system that's like a big computer where you put law and facts into one end and you crank a handle and you
Mhm.
get justice at the other end. Inside that machine is human beings
Mhm.
with all their biases and frailties and prejudices. And so these cops were just making an emotional judgment call about how they felt about her demeanor.
Mhm.
And that's true at every step of the process. Prosecutors are making those emotional judgment calls. We like to think we're all rational, critical thinking
Mhm.
people, but we're not really. Humans are mostly emotional.
Mhm.
Our rationality is largely a veneer. And
Mhm.
then, of course, you have the jury, and the jury is made up of emotional human beings too. And the prosecutor makes emotional arguments to them to rev up their emotions.
Mhm.
That's not how it should work, but we're all human beings. It's a process of human beings, and it's imperfect.
What do you think about like false accusations? And how can I don't know, I know it's a little bit off of self-defense, but
No, it's fine.
how can men protect themselves from false accusations?
Well, you really can't,
Mhm.
except to not associate with people who might bring false accusations.
Mhm.
There's crazy people out there. Don't be in their company. Don't date them. Don't marry them.
Mhm.
In terms of what I think should happen to people who make false accusations, and we need to be careful because sometimes someone may make a claim that they believe is true,
Mhm.
but they just have the wrong person, right? It looks like the person who attacked them, for example. That's obviously not the case if we're talking about people in a relationship who know each other well.
Right.
But I think that if anybody makes a false accusation about anything, let's use a woman making she knows it's a false accusation of rape against a man, and she's caught, and it's proven she did that beyond a reasonable doubt, she should serve whatever prison sentence that man would have served if
Right.
her accusation had been believed.
And why is it so hard for things like that to get passed? Like why won't shouldn't that be cut and dry?
Well, because most of the people making the false accusations tend to be women making those kinds of false accusations.
Mhm.
And women are treated, as in life generally, with softer gloves than men are treated. They get shorter prison sentences. They get more favorable treatment in court. They're less likely to get convicted in the first place
Mhm.
on essentially identical facts. Uh, society just treats women differently than men, especially when they're going to be put to some kind of duress.
Yeah.
You know, people say when you're interacting with the police, just don't talk to the police. Never talk to the police. That's the cliche. I think it's more subtle than that. I think if you're a criminal, never talk to the police. So if you're actually a criminal, please don't talk to the police. Nothing good will happen to you. On the other hand, if you're attacked and you defend yourself and you're calling 911, you're calling the police, you're talking to them then. You're telling them what happened. It doesn't make sense to me that you would defend yourself, call 911, and it goes ring, 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 911, what's your emergency? And you're literally not going to say anything. Why bother calling them?
Right.
I do think that it's a fair position kind of in the middle where you're not a criminal, but you didn't call the police. The police called you. They just called you. We'd like to ask you questions. You can cooperate if you want. It's possible to say things that get you in trouble. And you're perfectly entitled, and I think it's a reasonable choice when the police call you and say, we have questions, to tell them, I don't answer questions. Polite, not rude. I'm sorry, I just don't answer questions. And there's really nothing they can do with that. If they have probable cause to believe you've committed some crime, they can arrest you, but they could do that anyway. You're not giving them more ammunition to use against you.
Wow, the system really, if it gets politicized, that seems to be like the kiss of death, is when politics become involved.
Well, it certainly means you're in a fight for your life. So it doesn't mean you'll be convicted. Zimmerman wasn't convicted. Rittenhouse wasn't convicted. But it certainly ups the stakes, and you're definitely going to trial. So it's very common in a killing case where the self-defender has been charged with murder or manslaughter to spend in excess of $200,000 before you even get to trial. And then it just goes up from there.
But if they don't have the money, where does it come
You
from?
get a public defender.
And those guys are really overworked, right?
They're overworked is the fair way to put it. They get a bad reputation, like they're bad lawyers. They're not bad lawyers. In fact, I would advise anyone who's thinking about going into the law, if you want trial experience, become a public defender. You'll get more trial experience there than anywhere else in the world. If you join a private firm, you won't see the inside of a courtroom for years. If you're a public defender, you'll be in a courtroom all day, every day of the week. Often they're the best lawyers, but they are way overworked. Instead of having one client or 5 clients at a time, they have 50 or 100. It's unmanageable.
And so I'm guessing more people can be put in jail, like unjustly, then, because they're overworked.
That's part of the process.
They just don't have the time.
So, a trial is a war. It's a battle. And just like any other war, how many resources you can bring to the fight matters, right? If you had 2 nations and one of them had 1 million people and one of them had 100 million people, it's not hard to predict who's going to win.
Right. That's an interesting way.
By the way, the prosecutor knows this, right? The prosecutor can see whether or not you have a public defender or an expensive private lawyer. He knows how many resources you have.
Wow. It's so interesting because we grow up thinking that the justice system is fair. And I guess it's probably more fair than some parts of the world, I'd imagine.
I think it's the best system anywhere.
Yeah.
But it still has profound defects.
Yeah.
Because it's run by humans.
Right. So do you think that money buys freedom then by that?
I think it's better to have more resources than fewer resources.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's such a lawyer answer. Sorry, that's such a good one. Okay. Is there anything else important that you think the audience should know about self-defense that maybe we...
Yeah, they should get my free book, Law of Self-Defense Principles. Most people read it in an afternoon. And again, it's free. Get it at lawofselfdefense.com/free book. Check it out on Amazon. It's got 1,500 reviews. It's 5-star rated, but don't buy it on Amazon because they'll charge you, I think it's $20 or $25 for the book, plus shipping and handling. We only ask you to cover the cost of sending the book to you. The book itself is free. Lawofselfdefense.com/free book.